being specific and being precise, we can be like successful. You can go to the next slide. And so what does it actually mean, early stage investor? It's actually, we come in the post-seed early series A stage. And then again, what does that mean? It's we come in when a company has like an initial commercial traction. So what if you base a number on that, it's like between 10K and 100K MRR, because then we feel like, okay, the problem that they are solving is a problem felt by the market. And then we come in to like guide to help the company going from this initial product market fit into like thought leadership, product leadership, and then eventually market leadership. So when we come in, we try to help the company in making every process like a data-fied process to make it repeatable, scalable in the future. That's a bit about us.
Super.
Yeah. And these are some companies that you might know, some Belgian, some Dutch companies. Colibra and Deliveract are two unicorns. Value Blue is our very successful Dutch company. Folion is another successful Dutch company. They are all successful, but so yeah. This is a bit about Newion.
Nice list and nice logos. I think there's a few familiar ones for most of our audience here. So yeah, quickly about Younium then as well. We are founded by our CEO Niklas, who at that time was looking for a subscription management solution to automate his, advanced SaaS subscriptions. And then he found like most of the subscriptions management tools out there were really made for like the simple, like Netflix type, Spotify type subscriptions instead of negotiated deals. Every customer had a different agreement, things like that. And he felt like with all the solutions out there, I want to do this myself. I think I have a good solution in mind. He was very successful in that in 2017, and now we have a development center in Malmö. We have sales offices and local offices in Stockholm, Philadelphia, and Amsterdam, and we also recently opened another office in Krakow for development. We have more than 100 international customers, so like not only like operating in a certain country, but they have like an international wide span. We're growing 150%, probably a bit more annually, and we have a positive net revenue retention. About me as a person, I speak to SaaS companies daily, and I worked in the M&A world before this, so I know a lot about investments, about shares, stocks, and all the good stuff. And I love music. That's it in a nutshell. So like I said, we first want to talk a bit about the economy and the reasoning why we actually have this webinar. The reason why is I actually got triggered by a few LinkedIn posts a while ago, and these are actual posts, what you see popping up on the screen now. So, we saw the economy, of course, going down, and then there's people that claim that it's going really down and it's impossible to grow as a SaaS company. And, the venture capitals want at least half the company in shares before they give like 50 euros of funding. Enterprise values were cut in half, and it's, venture capitals don't want to give me money anymore. We really saw these things happening, and we were like, okay, let's take a closer look at this and, what's really going on. So we found a few things with this. So what did happen is we saw a lot of things in the world. We're not here to talk about the negative things like diseases and wars. They're happening. Of course, I think everybody here knows that. And it's very unfortunate, of course. And those things, we cannot pretend that's not going on. Those things cause economic decline for sure, right? You have the inflation also. There's things going on that, make it a bit harder to grow, as most SaaS companies maybe do. We also saw with this that a lot of public companies suffered hits on this because, they're typically also funded by individuals, by consumers, by people at home, and they are more careful with their money maybe than VCs. So, you saw that happening a bit. Some cryptocurrencies went down. Bitcoin, I think it probably is a bit increasing again, but it did drop significantly over the few months. And there's more examples like that. And VCs became a bit more firm in general in the approval process. So I think what you kind of saw maybe in the last recession, when was it, 2008, you saw that a lot of these, when you went for a mortgage, for instance, you go for a mortgage, and you in the good old days, you just show like you told the bank like I make 10,000 euros per month, and they believe you and they give you like 300,000 euros for a house. Now you have a firm approval process. You need to show that you actually work there. Your employer needs to deliver a proof of, that this person works here. You need to show your salary slips, identification, like a lot of more things than what you had to show maybe 10 years ago. And I think that's something we see in most venture capital companies as well right now. So they just are a bit more careful with the money. So what is really cool is Medium.com, not sure if you're familiar with that, did a very nice survey on, what matters to most venture capitals and investors. That can also be angel investors, for instance, more now in 2022 than it did last year, maybe. And then you see the dark blue being more important in 2022. So you see a lot of things being kind of steady. The size of the market, the competition is kind of steady. Revenue growth rate, product market fit, and quality of the team becomes a bit more important. So they take a bit of a closer look. But if you look at valuation and capital efficiency, you really see, okay, so the numbers are what really matters. We need to have the proof in the pudding, and we need to see, under the hood, what really is happening to get funding, pretty much. So these are very important lessons, and this is not, like I said, one company. This is 35 people voting on this specific topic. It's quite significantly more important, I would say. So this kind of summarizes the why we have this webinar, and we're going to make it a bit more practical from here on out. But I think before we do that, Hervoje, we have a poll for our audience. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed it is. Thank you so much, Walter. Let's kick the poll now. So to warm things a bit before our chat with Armand. So are you planning to go, or are you in the process of funding round in the next 12 months? So we have simple yes and no here, and we will give it a couple of seconds more for our audience to answer this question. This is also kind of good bridge to our talk with Armand, and that we also see this inside the mind of the VC and what is happening, and to get also some practical tips, of course. Okay, we'll end the poll. And we will show the results. So we have 62% saying yes, so they are in the process, and then also no, it's 38. So I think this is really, really good ratio for today's topic, and also to see more about it, and also to have people prepared maybe for some, and also to give them some tips.
Yeah. Looking forward to meet with all these 16 companies.
Very good.
Okay,
cool. Then I think it's time to move on to the not the Q&A, but Hervoje has some questions prepared for Armand that hopefully, will answer a lot of the questions you have as well.
Yeah, as we mentioned in the beginning of the webinar, so how we see this, we see it more as a panel. We will then also like to invite all of you to write your questions in the Q&A part, or also write it maybe in the chat box. I have a couple of questions prepared for Armand, maybe to heat up the discussion. And so, as we saw in a really good graph from Walter, what he showed us from the Medium, could you tell us, Armand, are valuation and capital efficiency also more important to Newion since last year, like we saw it a few minutes ago?
For Newion itself, we have always been very focused on valuation and capital efficiency, because actually why our customers, our clients are the investors investing in us, and we sell them a multiple on their committed capital. So when we pay the highest valuation for our company, we have to be sure that we will ever be able to return that money at least 5 times to our investors, because we have to take into account the companies that will fail, to come up with a decent return for our investors. That's why we have never paid the highest price, but always the honest price. We see that prices of the market are coming back down to the prices that we that we calculate. And also on capital efficiency, it's also super important, because it tells us 2 things. It tells us one, how scalable is the organization in a VC way. If I put €1 in it, am I sure that there will be ever something coming out? And also it tells us something about how the team thinks about their growth plan. If the company has a certain capital efficiency of X right now, but their business plan for the next 2 years shows a capital efficiency of 2x, and then there is an issue. We have never seen an increase in a doubling of capital efficiency after we have invested. So that's why we are always very picky on these two metrics.
And now, so we are in let's say it also really challenging times for economy. Like, and the title of the webinar is how to raise the funds in the economy decline situation. So could you tell us more, please, the current economic climate? How does Newion and other VCs see it? Do you see it as a slowdown of investment, or at least do you see a change in your funding approval process since last year? Could you give us a bit of a comparison and a bit of insights on this?
I think, first of all, we have 4 companies lined up, so 4 investments lined up for closing in the next 4 to 5 weeks, and we have invested in 6 companies in the whole of 2021. So we are not slowing down on our investments. And I think all good VCs aren't either, because there's a lot of dry power in the market and capital has to be invested. What is changing is that cowboys coming into the markets and like paying these crazy prices, they will rather slow down on their investments. But I think for like companies that are eligible for the VC stamp, they will always have funding. They will always receive funding. And it's very important for those companies to shop the market and to talk to enough investors, because there will always be a decent price for a decent stake in a company.
And we know that we have 62% in today's webinar who are planning to raise the funds in the next 12 months. And what we also know that investing in the early stages comes with the high risks, and there are little data points to make a decision based on. Could you give us maybe an insight? What are some techniques you use to decide go or not to go with the investment?
Yeah, first of all, I would say, like, because last point I also talked about like companies eligible for the VC stamp. It's like every company is like a great venture, and like every entrepreneur has like steel balls 10 times the size of mine. So I'm always super honored to be able to talk to all the entrepreneurs, even if they are not eligible for like our VC investment. Because why is that important to mention is that to be able to, because like we have to return the money 5x to our investors. So that means like if we invest in a company of 20 million euro valuation, the company has to at least grow to like 100 million valuation. How many companies have you seen in the last year being sold for 100 million? Not that many, certainly not in the Benelux. So actually your company and your product needs to be able to grow like significant enough in a market large enough, so that it is possible to attain those valuations. And so some of the key metrics that we try to analyze is like, okay, what is the market size? And we do this in a bottom up and a top down way. Bottom up is like we multiply the amount of companies that we see in your category or that we see in your market with like your current ACV, and then we can calculate like, okay, is this a 100 million euro market? Is this a 500 million market? Is this a 10 billion euro market? If it's a 10 billion euro market, like most likely the market sizing is too big, and we have to pinpoint like the specific niche of companies that you will attain to. And then we will do a top-down analysis. It's like, okay, how much money is being spent in this category where we can add you to? And then we can calculate what is the share of wallet to which you can attain to, for which you will be fighting. And this gives like a small idea. This gives an idea of like how big the problem is that you are solving. And then we try to analyze. It's all a combination. What is the category that you can be added to, and what's the evolution of this category through time? And is the current evolution, the current trend where you are surfing on, is this actually indeed 10 times better than the previous solution? Because otherwise it will be difficult to like say to all these companies like, hey, we have this solution and it's way better. But like if they don't feel that it's way better, then they will likely not switch to your solution. And also then we will analyze like, okay, what are the adjacent categories? Maybe they don't solve the same issue, but they have the same technology and actually they have the same product. Because then if your market becomes bigger, it might be easy for them to switch to your market as well. And then you are like in a new fight with new competitors. And then the last thing, so is like, okay, what is the go-to-market strategy and how scalable is this? Do you depend on partners to scale? Do you depend on only yourself? Because that shows, again, back to like the capital efficiency, that shows how efficient you will be able to scale your organization into an international size.
Mm-hmm. Great. So basically, so there are three points. Three key topics. What you cover. So that's the market size. What is the products and the solution to be added, and how they are better than others on the market, and go-to-market strategy. Really, really good key points for me also to learn. Maybe one day I will apply for it. But in the preparation of this webinar and this panel, we did talk about, and you also mentioned that you are impressed with the entrepreneurs, with the companies who are applying. And one thing what you mentioned, and what struck me really interesting, is the relationship what you have with your portfolio and how important that is for you. So could you tell our audience a bit more about this part, the relationship between the VC and between the company, maybe also in the case of you guys in Newion?
I think for every investment, 50% is about the company and the numbers, 50% is about the team behind the company. And that's super important. It's a lot of psychology is involved, because like we go into like a business relationships for at least 6 to 8 years, where we'll be like in weekly communication with each other, if not more. So it's like super important for us to like to have a good feeling of who you are as a founder of the company. To be able to know how to communicate with you, how to understand certain ways that you communicate, and by being honest to each other, by playing always open kimono, it will be easier for us to like in easy times. It's very easy to get along and to like say, hey, okay, then we will drink champagne together and that's fine. But like if things turn sour, then we also have to. Then it's super important to have like this open relationship with each other. To like be able to swiftly shift into new gears and to like try to solve the situation in the most efficient way.
Great. We have a couple of questions already in the Q&A part of today's webinar, so we will take them in a couple of minutes. Thank you all for dropping those over. I have one more thing to ask you. How important is to have metrics and financial plans in order when someone is knocking, for example, on the VC's door? Could you maybe tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so I've added some slides for this to explain it with a little analogy. It's like, this is the glass ball, and like we don't have a glass ball. So we have to calculate, we have to estimate every time that we make an investment, like, will this ever be big? And so when you go to the next slide, I've made this analogy with watches. I don't wear watches, but like it was a good analogy. So every company comes to us and they show us like they want to sell us this perfect story of the perfect world. And so it's a super expensive watch, and like they say like, hey, this is the best watch ever, it is completely real, this will be big. And that's actually our job as an analyst at an investor to go, when you go to the next slide, to discover like, is this a real watch coming from like a real store, or is this being sold by someone on the street and it's like plastic and it's fake? So what do we then do is, when you go to the next slide, we take the whole watch apart in like 1 million pieces, and there are like 100 sub-problems. Like, for example, what's the market? How's the competition? What's the technology being used? What's the product like? What's the commercial evidence? And then we take those things apart, and then, so we don't, as said in the beginning, we don't have a glass ball. So either we derive insights through metrics that are being measured by the company, or we like do the analysis ourselves. And try to quantify some qualitative points. It's not hard to imagine that if the metrics are there, it's way easier for us to do the analysis and to come up with an honest and a real picture of the organization. Because then when we put the watch back together, it's like serial numbers. All these little radars have a serial number. And if there are metrics, it's very easy to evaluate the serial numbers. If there are no metrics, and like we have to invent them in a way, or like try to come up with them, that's way harder. So of course it's if the company has metrics to show, it makes our life way better.
And before you give us a couple of practical tips, can I ask you, when the company approaches you, what source do they bring with you, with themselves, with this data and the metrics? Do they have like we hear quite a lot, single source of truth, or do they have a couple of sources like Excel maybe, or a finance system? I see their financial plan as part of this mechanism of this clock. And how important is this source for you guys at Newion?
I think it will not surprise you that most of the companies approaching us have everything in Excel. Excel is still the main source of like any computation done in the world. That's also not a bad thing, because like we invest, as said, like very early stage. So it's not a bad thing that these companies don't have all the right software, like for example, Younium in place to have like decent numbers, trustable numbers in place. But indeed, most of it is Excel, or it's like from their accounting software, or it's like a screenshot from their HubSpot. That are like the main sources of data that we receive.
And did you ever experience maybe a situation where the results were not original, or there were like some not accurate enough as they were presented?
Many, but I would like to say like no one did it on purpose. Like everyone just like, because like the data is not centralized, or like there is not well defined. Companies forget sometimes how they came up with like previous numbers, and then they try to reproduce those numbers, and they are completely different because they come from a different source. So for example, one of the companies that we have invested in, they have -2 employees in a specific department. That's not possible. You cannot have -2 employees. So that was like a combination of different sources of HR data, which came up with like the -2 number. Or for example, CAC information that is being calculated through different sources on different times. And then you get completely different CAC calculations, which is like difficult to then derive insights from. So it happens a lot.
Great. And now maybe those practical tips, what I think that everyone was waiting for. Could you share a couple of those with us?
Yeah, I think foremost, so this is not one of the three, but like you do not measure metrics for an investor, please. Measure it for yourself. Building a venture, a company is like 50% science, 50% art. Art is like you being the artist, come up with all the ideas. And then the science part is evaluating all your ideas in like, hey, is this actually working? And that's why metrics can help you. So first, the first thing what I would really suggest to you is like define all the formulas. Define every formula for a metric in like, for example, in Excel, or like in a Notion, or like somewhere that like everyone in the organization knows how this calculation has been made, so that it can be easily reproduced. 2, be consistent on data sources. If you use committed ARR instead of actual live ARR, then be consistent on it and do the calculation, derive the metrics every day, every week, or every month, so that there is like, we can derive a certain trend. You can derive a certain trend. And 3, derive insights from those metrics. Metrics are worth nothing if you do not derive the right insights from it, to then steer your organization on. So those are my 3 tips.
Thank you so much. Really interesting ones. And just to repeat, we will send the recording in a couple of days to everyone. And also feel free to drop in any Q&As or any comments or anything that you feel like, or that you're inspired maybe by Armand's talk by now, in our chat box or in the Q&A part. Walter, I think that you also prepped up a couple of practical tips from Younium. So we are encountering quite often SaaS companies what are going for funds, and you talk really often with those companies. We also see that in today's webinar we have 62% of people who will go for funding in the next 12 months. So could you give us also a bit on the practical tips what Younium has?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I was really surprised to see 62% is really high of number of attendees that actually plan. On the other end, it makes sense. Why would you join a webinar like this if it's not relevant for you in ever? So I think, mixed feelings, I would say. But we have some practical tips indeed, like our voice says, based from the conversations and dialogues we have with SaaS companies on a daily basis, but also based on talks we have with Newion. So this is, of course, not the first time we speak with Armand here. We have regular dialogue and many others like that. So we came up with three things. One is drive your metrics early on. So be ahead of the game and make sure you have fact-based results to present to an investor. But like Armand says, I really want to emphasize that as well. Don't do it just for you, for the investor. Do it for yourself. And don't make metrics like a bureaucratic thing you have to do every month, but use them as kind of a business mirror that really, reflect to you what the business is doing, what's happening, what are the trends in products, what roadmap things are working well that we are developing. Use all the revenue growth. So why is it growing? All those things, make them fact-based for yourself and be consistent about it, like Armand said as well. Really agree with that. The second is automate subscription handling. Yeah, big surprise from a subscription management provider, right? But even though it's not about the automation, it avoids revenue leakage and therefore improves your net retention, which is a very important metric in the fundraising process. And yeah, I think that's really important. And also, it makes sure the valuation can be a bit higher if you do all those things properly. Third is build your network. So I know for a lot of SaaS company I've spoke to, it's sometimes hard. Not all SaaS founders are extroverts, right? So it's really hard to just go to network events. I went to a network event last Wednesday, I think. It's hard for me too. I don't like to walk up to people and just start talking. I was lucky enough, my wife just came to me and I didn't have to, hit on anybody. Otherwise, I would have been stuck forever as a single man. But it's good to do that. Build your network. Make sure that you speak to fellow, people that are in the same boat as you. And when it's time to go for funding, make sure you don't only speak to one. Sorry, Armand. So maybe 62% of the people today. If you get half, it's okay, right? So make sure you speak to multiple, because they're also in competition with each other, right? They also want to bet on the right horse. If you can say it like this. So it's the same when you're up for sale, when a big FISMA calls you like, hey, we want to buy you. I mean, make sure you also speak to somebody else that also might be interested, because you can, work up your enterprise value a bit and get the best deal out of those things. So those are practical tips from our end. And one last thing I wanted to leave you with before we open up the Q&A here is SaaS is resilient. We saw this during COVID. Everybody was kind of afraid, what is going to happen with this? And yes, of course, there were SaaS businesses suffering. There were things that are happening, but I think it's one of the strongest industries out there by far. It's one of the most fun industries as well, but it's also a very strong industry. So make sure you remember that if you have set up goals with your SaaS company a few years back, like I have this beautiful idea and I want to reach this goal, go for it. I think SaaS is resilient enough to realize all your ambitions. I think that's it for like the content portion of this webinar already. So make sure that you note Armand's number down here and his email address if you have further questions after the webinar, or if you want to have a chat about funding possibilities at Newion. And of course, you can also contact me on the bottom right there if you want to have any questions about metrics, KPIs, subscription management.
I also want to maybe to chip in on this.
Go for it.
We are constantly in contact with companies that are not raising money. So we try to establish long-term relationships early on. Like, for example, if it's still a paper ID, and then we try to like spar with these companies and these founders to like, hey, we have like weekly, monthly, biannually calls with these companies to like just check in and to like say, hey, can we help with anything? So even if you are part of like the 37, 38% that is not raising money, please also, if you want to spar with us, please reach out. It's obviously with no strings attached. Indeed, please talk to all investors that you can talk to, because it is a business relationship that you are engaging in for like a long time.
Great. Thank you so much, guys. We have really a good lineup of questions. So I will advise that we maybe start to do those and to be right on time because super good questions dropped in, and I'm kind of looking forward also to hear what your thoughts about it. So Armand, could you maybe elaborate how you define product marketing fit? So this is one of the questions what we got from the audience.
So first, product market fit is if you have like a couple of companies. For example, it's hard to place a number on it, but like if there are like actual companies buying your product and you see that like the vision that you have in front of you is actually being bought by the market, and it's not like, for example, you can have this product and it's used in different ways by different companies, then you don't necessarily have a product market fit. You have a great product and people are using it, but it's not necessarily because your vision is the right one. So if like the group of companies that are using your product is super niche and they're all using it in the same way, then we can say like, okay, there is an actual product market fit for this product in this market. And then we can build on that, because we have, because then you can build bigger in this one little niche, and it's very easy to go to be the biggest one in a little niche and then to flow over to other niches, then to try to like split your money and split your time on like a way too big market with like multiple angles of attack, because then it's very hard to grow big in this area, in this market.
Also, one more question came in, and that's how you are valuing B2B SaaS businesses. So could you give maybe a bit of an info on that?
Yeah, so we use the EPEF method. It's like one of the most common used methods for evaluations, for valuations. And so what is that? So we use like the current public markets multiples, and then we apply a discount to it. So we look at your last 12 months growth, we look at your next 12 months growth, and then we see like, okay, how long have they? So it's like a calculation. You can look it up on the internet, and then we say like, okay, this company, given the previous growth, we can put this much trust in the future growth. And that's how we come up with like a certain valuation, but it's always a discounted form of the current public market valuations.
Thank you. And there is also a bridge to the slide, what Walter shared with us from the Newiom. How do you calculate the capital efficiency? Also,
capital efficiency is, for example, it's a lot of CAC, is a lot of customer retention costs. That's are like the most important ones for us. It's like, how expensive is your growth, and can this actually ever be like profitable? If we grow to like 10 or 20% growth a year, so then we don't need like the huge sales force. Can we then actually make money? That's how we calculate our capital efficiency.
And do you have a detailed template for pitching to VCs? That's also the question from the audience.
Not necessarily. I think like the points that we've mentioned before, like if there is a competition overview in there, and then we always get like the axis and you are in the top right. But that's the first thing that we will try to fight, is like you are never in the top right. So then we try to like find new axes, so that to come with like other visions of your product. But like please discuss your commercial traction. Please discuss also where you come from. Like not physically, but like, hey, what have you done in the past, and why is it that you came up with this solution? Because previous experience does mean a lot. What is your product? But go like not too much into technical depth, but like more in like a vision depth. What is a problem you're trying to solve, and in what market are you trying to solve this? Or they can always reach out to you, and of course, like just reach out and say like, hey, this is my company. We are raising like 6 months. What do you expect from us? And then we will go into a conversation, and then we'll see what you already have, and then we'll see, okay, we need also this information, and then we build it together in a way.
There is one more question, and it's so I will just read it. Gide Doma, I hope that I pronounced it correctly. Really sorry. Part-time CFO for the scale-ups. He asks, what are the key areas where you think SaaS companies should have more insights in performance with KPIs themselves before they are looking for funding?
I think so. For example, of course, your growth, of course, your churn, but also like your funnel rollover. Like in your sales funnel, that's it, because that tells us a lot. In like it tells us on how efficient is your sales team and how efficient is your marketing team, and then how big is the market that you are attaining to. If like 5% of the companies you talk to only rolls over to the next stage in your funnel, then maybe you don't really, then maybe there is something wrong with your go-to-market, or there is something wrong with your product, and you should actually redefine your market. So that tells us a lot, the funnel rollover.
Great, thank you. There is one question for you, Walter. How many of Younium customers have funded fueling their business?
Wow, that's a really good question, a really tough one as well. I would have to make an estimate. I don't have a list here on my desk, to be completely honest. But if I were to guess, it would be kind of a similar number as we saw in the poll. I would say roughly between 60 and 70%. We have a few bootstrappers, which means, growing on your own means pretty much. So I would say 60, 70%. And out of that extra 30, 40, there's probably also a few that have like an angel investor or a buddy behind it, that it's not like a public funding that people know about. So yeah. I think a lot of people have at least some form of money, to start their journey. But I think 60 or 70 are like joined to 60 or 70% are like joined to venture capitals.
A follow-up question. And did Younium also got funding?
Yes, good question. Yeah, so yes, there was a press release, I think like September last year. We did a small funding round last year to scale up our extra development center, scaling up our Americas office. Yeah, you can probably Google it and then find it, and otherwise, yeah, it's on our website as well. So yes, we do.
Great. Back to Armand, there is a question. What do you say was the top 2 KPIs that you look for a SaaS company today?
I think it's a bit similar to the answer for Jidde. It is, of course, churn, it is growth, and it is your funnel rollover. Those are like super important. And also your CAC, but like that's all combined to each other. You can calculate everything from the other metrics, but then you get like a holistic view on the efficiency of your organization and on your appealing to the market that you're trying to attack.
And Maria added, there is a question about Newion. Do you invest in US companies, US-based companies?
No. Europe is invested in us, and so we can only invest in European companies.
But I can tell you this, that Younium has an office in Philadelphia. We are not investing, but if you will ever need a subscription management solution, then we are in US in Philadelphia. This is for the attendee.
But we do help our companies in going to the US. We have now 4 or 5 companies live in the US. We have even companies moving their headquarters to the US. So after we invested, that's like a natural flow. But we cannot invest in the US companies from the get-go.
Yeah, okay.
It's also coupled to our focus. We want to focus.
There is a question for both of you. So Walter, maybe you can take this one first. Do you believe the trend of the decreased funding will keep going?
I don't have the glass ball that Newion has, to be completely honest. I don't think so. I already feel it being better. And running these webinars and explaining a bit about the truth behind all of what's happening, I think really helps with that. So I would encourage you all to spread the word of what you learned today, because typically I'm not one of those haters of media or something, but I think the media blows things out of proportion sometimes a bit when these things happen, and the fear that comes from that has more impact than the actual things that are going on. So I think it's really good that we all believe investors make money with investing. So I mean, if it would really be true that it's not possible to have funding, then there will be no more VCs in a few years. So I strongly believe this trend will go up. As always, I think everybody was kind of like, let's wait a bit and see what's happening in like Q2, early Q3. But speaking for Younium, we already see an uplift. So I think it's going the right way again.
Yeah, for us the same thing. I would say companies like to quote Peter Thiel, the 0 to 1s, they will always get funding. The 1 to many's, maybe they got too much funding in the recent years, and 2020 and 2021 were like a bit of like a exception to the rule. And for those companies, like try to redefine yourself, try to find that 0 to 1 proposition inside your product. And then you will certainly get funding as well, because if you follow a bit on LinkedIn, like companies, investors are raising money at like record speed. This money has to be put into action in like the next 5 years. So there is billions of euros available in the EU zone to be invested in you, and it will be invested in the next 5 years.
Great. There is again one more question for both of you, and it's connected to the metrics, what we kind of talk quite a lot during this webinar. Probably all companies measure MRR and churn, but which SaaS metrics impresses you most if a company monitors in these early stages? Maybe Armand, you can kick off this one as well.
Yeah, some measurements are just not possible. Like for example, LTV or NRR, net revenue retention. If your organization is only live for like 8 months, it says nothing. Then it's like, yes, the company is still there, but like, good luck. So that's not really it. I would say like, what I really like is if you have like a clear overview of like every company that's like is your customer, like to have like a clear insight in like to what category does it attain. Like if the companies are all very similar, that makes it easy to build your go-to-market strategy on. Or if they are like all over the place, and they're coming from everywhere, and they have like all from different categories, then it's way harder, because like to what do you attain actually? So that's cool if a company measures this, and if they really know what their ICP is, because yeah, ICP is often a point of discussion.
Yeah, we have this discussion quite often. I know. Yeah, ICP is really, really important. Walter?
Yeah, so I agreed on the ICP for sure. But, you know, I am kind of a commercial man here at Younium. I care about the ICP a lot. But also, I think what really impresses me is when customers measure the SaaS magic number. But that's, again, maybe from a bit more of a commercial standpoint. So really see like on a quarter-based, what am I growing? How is my customer acquisition cost versus the extra revenue I'm bringing in, to really see like, am I doing a profitable job in sales and marketing, and should I continue scaling up? And because the SaaS magic number can also be a real trigger. So like, is it time to invest more, or more or less? So if you have a very good SaaS magic number, that also means it's probably time to speak with Newion and boost that, grab that momentum and grow even further. So I think that's one you should start with quite early, because it's not dependent, like Armand says, on an existing base, on a backlog, on histories of data points and things like that. You can start with it pretty much from the beginning and really, do that right. That's probably my most favorite one. I measure it very much. I love it.
Thank you, Walter. There is one more question what just popped in. If VC accepts if the product market fit is okay, but the sales team is weak. So Armand, could you maybe give us a comment on this?
So that means like that your CAC is super high, or then we will just try to figure out if it's solvable by like changing the sales team. And then we will most likely first try to figure out, why is your sales team not performing? Is it because every salesperson is like bad, which is very unlikely? Then there is something else wrong. Maybe it's in your marketing, that they don't get the right leads in your salespersons. So, and that's actually like, if you don't have that answer yet before you talk to us, that's like a little bit then you are like in the weak spot, because then we have to discover together with you, and then we can come up with like anything. So if you have a clear picture of like, hey, this is why it's going bad, and this is how we can solve it, and this is why I need like funding to solve this, that helps a lot. So do not come with unanswered questions or unanswered like points of attention.
One more, and this is, I think, the last question, and this one goes to Walter. It's connected to the what questions do you at Younium receive for funding? Any specific requirements? What you have developed in the product for a specific, for this specific reason? This is kind of also connected to this what Armand said. Be prepared, so don't have unanswered questions.
No, I think it's two things. I mean, the product always talks about automating billing, and a lot of the prospects we receive is like, yeah, well, how does your billing engine looks? And of course it does that as a part of things, but I think what makes Younium quite strong and why we help people for funding is two things. It's the quality behind the data. So, an MRR that is shown is coming from, if I store a subscription in Younium that says the customer is paying 100 euros a month, as an example, you have a report coming from that subscription, we have 100 euros MRR. So it's not like something that somebody can just type in. It's actually, based on a contract, a commitment you have with your customer. I think that's one thing we solve. And two, the second thing is related to that. It's really, visualizing this for our customers. So when there's something happening, so a contract gets changed, we trigger an upsell or a downsell. When a contract gets canceled, we trigger churn. When a contract gets created, we trigger new deals. So everything is based on these things, and we provide that kind of mirror, as we talked about earlier in this webinar, to our customers, that they can really use this for themselves, first of all, but also to like Newion or other venture capitals that ask for monthly reports or weekly updates or whatever. They can even give them a user login so they can just check, how's the progress going whenever they feel like it. So I think that's the two things Younium brings to the table when it comes to speaking with venture capitals. Hope that
and
answered.
To pitch in on the last question, like the question before this one, is like, if you don't have the answer yet, you can always reach out to like an investor or to like a sparring partner with like, hey, I don't have the answer. Can you please help me with thinking about the answer and try to come up with it before you go into like an investment process. So the doors are always open of almost any VC. To help entrepreneurs or to spar with entrepreneurs, because that's what we like to do. We are a bunch of geeks and we like to think and we like to analyze.
Thank you so much, guys. And I learned so much from you, from both of you. Really interesting topic. And with this, we will also wrap it up. Linda, who we hide behind the scenes, shared a couple of links for all of you. Feel free to also check how Younium looks and to maybe meet better the platform. She shared with you a link, and then you can maybe see also what Walter mentioned now, what the functionalities Younium has. Also, I will really advise you sign up for Newion's newsletter. Good infos come there, not so often, so that's also nice. But when we receive the newsletter from Newion, kind of good articles, really good blogs, what they share, and insights on the market and the status of the market. So I will really invite you all, check out Newion website and also check out the Watch Younium in Action video. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for the great questions. Thank you guys for the great presentation. The recording will be sent in a couple of days. And I wish all of you good luck with getting funds in. And I hope that you learned something today and that you got some insights.
Exactly. Looking forward to all the press releases of the 60% companies. Thanks so much, everybody.
Looking forward to all the slide decks.
Yeah.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.